All right, perfect. We are on. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Microsoft Partner Community Thought Leadership Series. We are excited to kick off this presentation. This will be the first of 4 episodes with our partners, Progressive Computing. The series for the series title is 4 Critical Factors in Building an MSP to Last. We have Robert here on the line with us who will be presenting a few of the sessions and kicking us off. So we are very excited. I will go ahead and hand it over to you, Robert, for the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone's time. Today, we're going to be talking about recruiting, specifically in this 4-part series, recruiting for MSP talent. As an MSP owner for the last 26 years, one of the biggest challenges that we've faced is finding people. Finding customers is important, but, being able to service them with good people has been a huge challenge. I would be remiss not to also say I'm very honored, we are honored by Microsoft to share our experiences with you today. And to that point, as an attendee of many presentations, I always look to walk away with at least 1 or 2 nuggets of information. So that's my measurement or my goal of success today, is for you to walk away with just 1 or 2 things. If you walk away with more than that, then that's way more than I can ask for. So hopefully you'll find 1 or 2 things in there for you. Just a quick little background about who we are. We've been around quite a while. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we were founded in 1993. And I just threw up a quick little list of what popular songs were going on back then. We're based out of Yonkers, New York, which, if you know the area, we're right in the shadow of New York City. Manhattan Island is 20 miles right to our south, so that we can see the skyline. We started in 93 as X-based developers, for all of you Fox Pro folks out there, or anybody remember Clipper and Blinker and things like that. And it wasn't until 98 where we didn't hire our first 2 full-time people. We had some interns and things like that before, but 98 we hired our first 2 full-time people, which are actually still with us today. So we're blessed and fortunate to have them still with us. That's when Seinfeld ended. That's how far back that goes. And in 2007, we took this major leap, probably along with many of you, where we migrated or moved our business from a break fix into an MSP model. And today we're roughly 27 people and growing. I actually lost count the other day. I don't know if it was 26 or 28 or 27, but it's around there somewhere. And this is me, yours truly, Robert Chiaffi. There's no H in there. CIO, FFI. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of this company. And for if anyone wants to invite me to link with them to share information online, I'd be happy to link with you on LinkedIn. So I'm just going to try to jump right into things and get you some of those nuggets I promised. The unemployment rate is super low in the IT industry. Well, not just the IT industry, it's in all industries. Recruiting is very, very hard. It's, like I said, for us, it's one of the largest challenges out there. And I think for a large majority of those of you on this call or listening, you would agree. It's probably why you're here. And in IT, it's actually close to 0%. Anybody good is employed. And so how do you get them to join your team? So I want to cue things up a little bit about talking, just to give you some questions, a little food for thought to see where we're going today. And I want to talk about, where do you find them? How do you attract them? What does your process look like? Who in your company is involved or should be involved? And then what happens next once you've actually got them in the door? Those are questions we need to ask ourselves about recruiting. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that some of you out there might be thinking that recruiting is I just need to find people, right? And early on, we thought the same thing. It just meant placing a want ad. But we figured out that the hard part was you think that the hard part is just getting candidates in the door, right? But as we'll dig in later, you're really looking for qualified candidates. And just because someone, it's just like someone with a computer need isn't necessarily a customer, right? And so someone just because they have some acronyms on their resume, they look like a candidate, they may not be. And so later what happened is we got smarter. We figured out that finding people is just the beginning of the process. And what we needed to do was to get really good at interviewing them and making them an offer. So those are the next two steps that we figured out. And that would include things like, the type of questions that we asked during interviews and how we conducted our interviewing process. And I'm going to dig again a little later into the details on this a little later. But we also had to figure out, well, what kind of benefits are we going to offer them? And I'm not just talking about things like an IRA or a 401k or pay, but really the whole package. But what we also discovered was that the process didn't stop there either. What we really needed to do was to get really good at not just finding and interviewing them and making them a good, solid offer, but we also needed to get really good at onboarding and developing them. Now, you might ask why. I mean, this sounds more like retention, and I would argue with you and say, yeah, it is more about retention. But the real reason it's in my recruiting spectrum is because if you don't onboard them properly and you don't develop them over time, then you're going to run a high risk of losing them and having to start this whole process over again. So in my book, this is about avoiding having to go and hire somebody new and wasting all that time and energy on the first guy that was only there a year or 6 months or whatever. So if you want to think about it in a different way, recruiting is a lot like selling. And you have to sell yourself. You have to look hard in the mirror and sell yourself to those candidates. It sounds a little upside down, right? They're the one looking for the job. You're the guy with the money or the opportunity. Shouldn't they be selling themselves? Oh, yes, absolutely, they should. But I think in order for you to do a good job at getting people in your door is you need to do as much selling back to them as possible. And I have plenty of stories I could tell you offline about how we've been successful with that. And so what are those things that you're going to sell? I think right at the top of your list is your culture. What kind of place is this? What's the mood? What's the vibe here? Is it an easygoing place? Is it a high pressure place? Is it a high learning experience place? Is it, is it kind of a lifestyle company you're running? Those sorts of things will emanate and you'll exude those during your process. I think you also want to be selling your people, right? You should be showing them the other people who you'll be working with, including yourself. It's important that they get to meet people within your organization and know, wow, if I join this team, those are those cool people I'll be able to hang out with and learn with every day. Your processes, we've had plenty of technicians who've said to us, one of the reasons why I selected this job when I had other offers was because of how much you guys have invested and talked about your processes. Very, very important, because technicians don't like to work in chaos. Believe it or not, lots of them like to kind of know what the rules are and what the guidelines are. You should also be upselling your customers. Who your customers are, I think, is important to show them that you're a vibrant business and the kind of people that you serve every day. Your size, and it doesn't need to be large, right? You can be a smaller shop and use that to your advantage. Let them know that you are, growing, or that your smaller size is potentially an advantage of working for a much larger organization where they may be one little tiny cog in a very large machine. So use your size to your strength. In our case, we used to do that. And now we're kind of flipping around and saying, hey, look, we're like, a growing MSP with 27 people. This company is moving forward, and, we're going to hit 50 and we're going to hit 100 soon. And you could be that person who got here before the 30th hire came in. So depending upon your size, you need to be selling the upsides of that. Your location. For us being in the shadow of New York City, a lot of people think about coming here because we're not in New York City, and the commute into a large metropolitan area can be a problem. So your location may or may not be an advantage that you can use. And for us, it's a lifestyle thing. You don't need to commute an hour and a half to 2 hours into Manhattan to come to the office every day. You can drive 30 minutes and be here and don't have to worry about that slog through traffic and trains and bad weather and all that stuff. And you should be talking about your growth. If you can demonstrate solid growth, that's another reason why a prospective employee would want to come work for you. And what other opportunities are on the table. You might, I would urge you to do things like show some vulnerability. Tell them that your cybersecurity offering is weak right now, if it is, and I'm just pretending for a moment that it is, and that you need somebody like, a new candidate like this person who can help, solidify and strengthen those walls. We're looking for somebody with those skill sets. So as much as you're looking for them to sell you, you need to be selling yourself back to them as well as part of the recruiting process. I can guarantee you through many stories that we've had here, I can share with you offline about many of the times where we've had candidates who have said, I got really excited about this offer because of all the things that you told me about your organization. It wasn't just a one-sided interview. So where do you find these awesome superstars and superheroes? Well, the first place is there are a bunch of recruiters out there, and I won't name names because I'm not here to endorse anybody in particular, but there's plenty of recruiters out there that'll charge you upwards of 20% of salary to find candidates. They specialize just in MSPs. They'll find you technicians who already know things like ConnectWise or AutoTask or Automate or Kaseya or Continuum. They already have these skills walking in the door. You have to weigh that cost against the amount of time you're wasting with candidates that you either need to bring up to speed or that are just unqualified. For those of you who've been through this process, that it's difficult weeding through all the resumes. They'll do it for you at a price. There's, of course, the traditional online ads. I have friends across the country in the space, and different ones will say, yep, we put ads out on all the traditional websites, and we get great resumes. Others who, like us, struggle in this area, we tend to go with recruiters. So it really just depends on what works in your market. I've toyed around a bit with LinkedIn Recruiter. It's not for the faint of heart. You're going to need to spend some money and some time. But LinkedIn is also another place to go looking for candidates. You can actually search on key terms if you sign up for the recruiter program. Again, that's not an endorsement. Your mileage will vary based upon where you are. Here's a favorite. We love to offer a bounty. We've got an outstanding bounty to all of our employees. If you can find us a tech when we're hiring, or really any position that we're hiring for, we offer like a $2,000 bounty, and we've paid it out before. I can't say that it happens very often, but we have hired people based upon recommendations. If they recommend somebody and we actually hire them, then that employee gets a $2,000 bounty. And you could do something similar with your network being your customers, your vendors, your business groups and associations that you belong to. Should always, social media for sure, you should always be promoting that you're looking for talent through all of the people that you know. Isn't it better to get a referral from someone that you know versus just something cold? I'm sure you'll all agree that that's very true. And then one of my little hidden secrets is that as a subject matter expert, I get involved in some local teaching. So again, your mileage will vary and depend upon your market, but there are plenty of places, probably in your neighborhood or wherever you live or work, that offer like certificate-based training. Maybe a local college offers like a certificate in like an A+ certification or reboot your career in IT. I've often gone in as either a subject matter expert or taught during lunch and learns, and I have found great candidates and actually even hired 3 different people from places like that simply just by offering up a couple hours of my time. Now, and I know I'm moving fast, but time is limited, so I need to make sure I get all of this in. When should you be looking for people is a great question. And we have a mantra here internally that we should always be hiring, because we know that with our mature process, our good mature hiring process, it still takes 3 to 6 months to go from a want ad to a hire. And then you have to consider onboarding, getting that, and I'm going to speak in terms of a technician because it's probably what you're mostly looking for, is, that technician may not be able to hit the ground running day one. You need to train them on your processes. You need to get them to learn your tools, you need to get them integrated in the systems, and they have to learn your customers. The point is, it takes a lot of time to go from from putting that ad out to actually having a productive team member. And so you should consider 1 to 2 quarters. At worst, you should be planning ahead. At best, you should always be looking for that next hire, because as soon as you land that next account is not the time to put the want ad out there. It's the time to do that is anticipating when you're going to need somebody. I know that that's difficult, and I know it is hard to do, especially when you're smaller and you have so many other priorities. But if you're out there, probably as a principal, as the main salesperson, when you're out with your networking groups, change the conversation up. Don't look for a customer during tomorrow's meeting or next week's mixer event at night. Work that room and say, hey, I'm trying to grow. Do you know any good people? Better to start doing that early than later. And so what is your process? I mean, having a good process is really important. And I want to pick apart some of the elements and share some of the things that we do. And, you know, you got to follow this mantra of hiring slow and firing fast. The inclination is, I need a guy right now, and I'm just going to hire the best out of the 2 candidates that I saw today, and we're good, right? And that usually will blow up in your face. So the mantra, hire slow, fire fast, is take your time. And so that ties back to the previous slide of being able to know in advance when you need somebody. So the very first thing is, actually, before I jump into the phone screening, is you should really know your core values. Actually, I'll step ahead with the phone screening first. This is the first step that we do. When we have a candidate, we want to talk to them over the phone to make sure that they have a good understanding of the job and they sound like a person you'd hire. If they can't string a sentence together or hold a conversation on a phone, it's usually not somebody who's going to work out, because those are what that phone conversation is what your customers are going to experience. So it's a very lighthearted, easy kind of just sort of simple questions, 15, 20 minutes. Just make sure that they sound like somebody you'd like. Now, what we do is we invite people in then for a core values interview, where we want to make sure that they embody the values that we hold near and dear, and will they mesh with others. So first, if you don't have core values, then I would highly recommend that you take some time to define them. And if you don't, stop. Make sure you do first, right? Because how are you going to hire the right people if you don't have your core values defined and that person doesn't match them? And then once you actually have your core values, you can ask scenario-based questions, which I can't really give you a great example because your values will differ than mine. So my questions around, let's say, respect, which is one of our core values, you may not have that core value, but you can, I'm sure if you sit down and think about it, you can come up with questions that match those values. Then we invite them back for a skills interview. And so here is where we're asking, like specifically with technicians, we're giving them verbal scenario questions and also a written test. So, you know, in the first case, you might say, like, you know, what's the first thing you do when you detect the PC has been ransomwared? You want to make sure that they're following logical protocols there. You know, what's the second thing that you would do? Or, you know, how about a user who says that she can't access the payroll folder? What's the first thing that you check, right? You want to make sure that they're answering that question in a way that is, you know, that they're not just giving access to to resources just because somebody asked, right? And then you can ask the technical questions about RAID 5 and number of disks and all that other stuff that's important to you. So we do both verbal scenario questions, and we also give a written exam. And then just some other optional ideas. Some of the things that we do here are personality tests, and we haven't done work a day yet, but we're thinking about this idea, and I know other companies that do, where they'll invite a technician or a person to come and kind of work in your company for a day and pay them, right? Tonight, in fact, I have a dinner interview. Myself and my business partner, the 2 owners of this company, will be taking a candidate out for dinner with their significant other and our significant others to see if they're really a match for our organization. So what differentiates you? And this kind of gets back a little bit before to the selling, right? You need to sell yourself to these candidates. Otherwise, why would they get excited about working for you? And I think what's really critical, well, there are a number of critical things. The first thing is, how do you treat them? Were they greeted properly when they came in your door? Are you respecting their time, or are you just kind of making them sit around for half an hour before you start interviewing them? Are you showing them that you're human and that you respect them as a human being? Are you setting them at ease, or are you making them feel uncomfortable? I think this is a very large part of why people leave here feeling, and even following up with an email like, I really loved the interview. I loved meeting you guys. I loved the place. I loved everything, and I really want to come work there. Those are the kind of notes that we get. Your interviewing process, it really needs to be mature and unrushed. I know it's very tempting to go through the interviewing and hiring process quickly, but you must take your time. It is a delicate process, and it shows them that you mean business. It also creates an atmosphere of exclusivity. Now, what I mean by this is that our phone screening happens on day one, and then we invite them in for a core values interview, and we intentionally send them on their way. And then we'll phone them back or email them back, inviting them back for a skills interview, and so on and so forth. We intentionally pace it slow because we want to be very careful and methodical about our process. We don't want them to feel like it's rushed. I think owner or senior leadership involvement is critical. You got to take the time to expose them to senior people, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Really important that you get into that interview and introduce yourself. And what does your environment look like? Would you quit your job and work in this dump? That's my silly question there, but making sure that your office or your work areas seem presentable. It's your place is going to become their place soon, so you're going to want to make sure it's someplace that they want to show up for. So I went through a lot of material really, really quick. And if there's any questions, I'd love to entertain them. And like I said, if you don't have time today, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to continue the conversation in that way. But if there are any questions, I'd love to take them now.
Robert, thank you for that. That was a great overview. One thing I kept thinking when you were going through the presentation is how applicable all of that content and information is across industries. So I really thank you for that. I did have a couple of questions. I'll just start with the first one. So you mentioned there's about a 20% charge that MSP recruiters have in terms of helping you identify that talent. Based off your experience, would you say that that is a best practice or a way that you would encourage other MSP partners to go with their business in terms of finding that talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard when we were like 10 or 12 people, paying, $15,000, let's say, to a recruiter to hire, a $60,000 a year tech was, it was a punch to the gut, but when we went through 3 or 4 bad hires, suddenly 15 grand didn't feel so bad. They're out there, and it's about what they charge. I've heard ranges between 20 and even upwards of 25%. My experience is that they deliver some really good quality candidates to your door. No fuss, no mess, exactly what you're looking for.
Excellent. And then another topic that you touched on in terms of the importance of the company needing to sell to candidates to really find the right fit. I didn't hear the word fit too much, but I think there's a lot of value you can place on fit on both sides, whatever that means. Could you speak a bit more about what progressive computing thinks about fit and the importance of that when you're looking at when you're looking at candidates to recruit into the company?
Yeah, I mean, I think, fit is, fit is something that fits more within our core values interviewing process. We want to make sure, I mean, I'll share with you our core values very quickly. It's team, we get together, we get it done, respect, respectful always, commitment, determined to do what it takes, and humble, confident service without ego. So if that's not you, right, then and during our interviewing process, we'll figure out whether that's you or it's not you. we'll figure out whether it's a fit both ways. So we're doing as much as we can to sell candidates on who we are to make sure that we're a good fit for them, as well as we're trying to cut through the resume, and get down deep into that person's personality and their experiences and background to see if they're a good fit for us. And I think the way you do that is by examining your core values.
Great. And the last question here is you talked about the importance of your networking, focus on finding good staff leads as a way to growing your customer base. What would you say in terms of the percentage of time you spend networking that you would spend focused on finding a good candidate for your company versus growing your customer base?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you whether or not I can't give you a good percentage. I can say that I like to change up the conversation based upon what we know is important to us at that moment. Let me give you maybe a clearer answer in this is that we knew for 2019 that our growth plan called for a 31% revenue growth. And as you might imagine, that would include hiring some people, and we projected we were going to need to add 6 people. Actually, we've already surpassed that number for this year, so our target was a little off, meaning we grew actually even more. But during the beginning of the year, the very first thing I did when I was out at networking groups is to say, hey, look, I've got this problem of I need to hire about 6 people this year, and these are the types of people that I'm looking for. So I intentionally targeted specific people that I would know would be a good, that were very networked themselves, and took them to lunch and explained what was going on here. And that led to all sorts of resumes flowing in, some for technical positions and some for non-technical positions. And I think in 2 cases, we hired people in that way. So I think it's going to ebb and flow a bit. And want to try not to be reactionary. You want to try to be as proactive and strategic about that as possible.
Excellent. Thank you. I see that we just have about 30 seconds left here. So thank you for this presentation today. Very much appreciate it. For all those who are joining us now or watching this on demand, we hope that you tune in for our next Thought Leadership episode. That will be next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be talking about managing your MSP. So thank you so much, Robert. And we look forward to your presentation next week.
Thank you all.